All right, we did it. We're here. Opening day, baby. Whew. I think we could all agree the Jays sneaky put us through hell last year, even though they made the postseason for whatever the hell that was worth. Like I mentioned yesterday, it was the Simpsons monkey paw season. All you want is meaningful fall baseball. Well, all you're going to get is meaningful fall baseball. You're going to get meaningful fall baseball, but yeah, you're not going to enjoy it. You're not going to enjoy meaningful fall baseball. The goalpost has moved. That's the feeling of today that I have, okay? Because I think that we would all agree, nobody wants to be pessimistic on opening day, right? Nobody wants to feel like angry or annoyed or down on a group that hasn't had a chance to do anything yet. But this season for the Toronto Blue Jays feels very, very different than the years that we've had past in this group's recent history, which is we've come into every single year with unbridled optimism. Basically, since Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and Bo Bichette became regulars, we looked at this as, boy, these guys are going to be nasty. Holy crap, this might be the best generation of Blue Jays baseball that we're ever going to get. I'll never forget that when they were signing George Springer, Ennis and I were doing shows talking about how there was never a time where the organization had as much talent, as big of a budget, and as deep a farm system, and as much just hope that we've seen since we were fans, at least, of this baseball team as, adults. I can't speak to how it really felt when I was a kid and this team was winning World Series. And that's gone. That's not there anymore. And it would be disingenuous for me to say that it is, because I don't think that's really how anybody's feeling. I think that there's probably a lot of people that are excited to get the baseball season started, which of course I am. I can't wait to watch baseball. I love baseball. I think I mentioned this just in passing with Armin all the time, where I'll just be like, man, I just love baseball. I'll talk about it with my friends where I just bring it up and I'll go, I can't wait for baseball to start. I can't wait to get down to the ballpark, watch the Blue Jays play, ride the up and downs of the season. But the feeling this year is that meaningful September baseball, meaningful fall baseball, that ain't it with this team anymore. It's different. There's got to be more. And to me, it's a few things now. You got to be entertaining. This product has to feel fun. It can't feel like a drag the way that it did last year, because even when they were winning games, it was tearing people apart. People just didn't it wasn't fun. It was a slog just about every single game that this team ended up winning. Slog. That was the way that it felt. Even Mark Shapiro admitted at his year-end media conference what a difficult year it was for them. They ended in one of the most embarrassing fashions that I can think of when it comes to any Toronto sports team. Like from a playoff standpoint, that's the way you went out. That felt like you could put that up against, I don't know, Raptors getting swept by the Wizards, where it was, oh man, they're good. And Paul Pierce went, nah, that team ain't it. And then they didn't even have a moment in the series. You can put that up with, we want Florida last year, and then the Leafs go in and play Florida and they just get embarrassed and they get bounced in 5 games. At least they were like the better team. That one was a really, really tough exit. So yeah, you've got to be entertaining. You've got to hit on some players that had lower expectations this year, right? Some people have to exceed what you're anticipating from them this year. They need to cash runners in scoring position, and they need to provide hope. They need to provide hope to the fan base that this year can actually be different, that this year is the year that they're going to actually win a playoff game. Because we've all kind of had it, and we've all kind of seen it, and we've seen the growing pains, and yes, Vladdy's young, and yes, Bo is still young, and blah, 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 blah. But this is it. This season has a very, very, very different feel. So be entertaining, cash runners, give people hope. That's all we want. I think when everybody closes their eyes, they're not trying to dream on the Blue Jays being annoying or some version of what they were last year. You close your eyes and you think about things all falling the right way, right? You think about Vladdy hitting 40 home runs again. You think about Bo Bichette trying to put together an MVP caliber season. You think about the rotation staying healthy again. You think about the bullpen still being one of the better ones in all of baseball. You're hoping that some of the elder statesmen on this team don't regress, but they actually find the fountain of youth and that they actually rake. But yeah, we got to see it. And they've got this incredibly difficult start to the season. And I think it's just going to be fascinating over the next couple of weeks what we end up getting here. Because if the Blue Jays can just put together a good stretch of play, starting today, starting at 4 o'clock today, if they can start doing this, then that will help put everything behind them. That's what's going to turn the page. That's what's going to make people feel different. They get off to a slow start, and it feels like that slog, and boy, it's going to be pretty tough for this fan base if it just looks like all they did was flip from one season to the next. Anyways, it is opening day. It is hope day. It is time to turn the page, or at least try to. And it is a day that I do get very sentimental about the sport because I love it. It's my favorite time of the year, and it's one of my favorite sports and one of my favorite guests, Dan Shulman, voice of the Blue Jays. How are we, man?
I'm doing well, JD. How are you? I can see you're emotional. You're in mid-season form on Hope Day already.
It is, okay, it is Hope Day, right? But this Hope Day is very different than previous Hope Days that we've had, right? There's like a different tone to this one tonight. Like, I don't know, the first series of the year, I don't know if it feels this way for you because you're just a vet. You've done it for a while, and you're a pro. I'm an emotional person. But it always feels like to me that the first series of the year is like the most intense series until you get into September.
Right. Every game, the next game is always the most important game. The next series is always the most important. So you could probably play a drinking game with me saying, the next stretch is that kind of, and you'll hear it today. But I think there's some validity to it. I mean, first of all, it was one more, 2021, they missed the playoffs by a game. 2022, they have the 8-1 lead in game 2. Now you've got another instance, 2023. We all know what happened last year. It doesn't need to be litigated again. So you've added that, fairly or unfairly, rightly or wrongly, truth or fiction, the Ohtani thing is in the minds of some people. And just as an aside, like, I get why people jump on the front office sometimes. I don't get why you jump on them for trying to sign Shohei Ohtani. Like, what did they do wrong there? In whether they were used or not, they tried, and they got him to Dunedin. Obviously, he wasn't on the plane. Like, the whole thing took on an air of surrealism, really. But I don't know why you jump on them for trying to get Ohtani. But it hurts some fans. So you've got another playoff defeat. You've got that. And I think the fan base, I'm not telling you anything you don't know, and you're right, looks at this team. I think the expectations externally, for sure, are lower than they've been in the past few years. I mean, even on day 1 or day 2, whatever it was of spring training, when Bo Bichette said, and I'm paraphrasing because I can't remember exactly what he said, but we're not viewed the same way as we were, and I could see and I didn't feel this way in the past couple of years, but I could see a wide range of results for this team. I mean, I do think there's a chance that a lot goes right for them, that some or all of the guys who didn't put up their typical numbers last year do better this year. I think Varsho's going to do better. I think Kirk's going to do better. They need Vladdy and Springer to do better, and it's a lot of ifs, but if you get some positive things from the returning guys, I could see this team winning 90-plus games. I could also see this team winning 78 games. I really don't know. I could see them being a playoff team or non-playoff team. And if you're good enough to get in, you're good enough to do some damage. And you're also capable of getting swept, as the Rays did last year, as the Orioles did. The best division in baseball history did not win a single playoff game last year. They went 0-7. So forget about what happens once you get in. You just got to get in. And I think they're good enough to. But there are a lot of other good teams in the American League, and they're going to need to stay relatively healthy, and they're not off to a great start in that regard. Although, thankfully, Kevin Gausman's fine, or close to being himself. But getting back to what you were saying about tough stretch and all that, it's true. It's not ideal to play 10 games at Tampa, Houston, and New York to start the season, and you're doing it without Danny Jansen, Jordan Romano, Eric Swanson. So I do think it's important to not, come home 2-8, 3-7, like just tread water. Tread water in this opening stretch. Get home, get to a weaker part of your schedule eventually, get some guys healthy, And then it is a long, long, long season, right?
Oh, it's the longest season. This is,
Yes.
it's funny because I do this show Leafs Talk after every Leafs game. And you catch yourself sometimes thinking about, oh my God, remember this narrative? And it feels like 100 years ago. And you go, that was too much. And that's the hockey season with 82 games. So yeah, every single baseball season, I always tell myself, no sport makes you look dumber. Well, me dumber, because I have opinions on the sport, right? I come out here, I'm like, here's my thought on this. And then 2 weeks later, that's completely irrelevant or absolutely wrong. And it's, it's horrifying to look back on. But I really buy the weight just from the fan base standpoint, that they can't go through this opening stretch here and come back home for that Mariners opening day or season opener, home opener, and be, 4 games, 5 games below 500, where they just get smoked and obliterated in this series. They got to find a way. Keep your head above water. People are going to be patient. Win these games. Look good in some of these games. Be a scrappy group that actually starts to hit. And I think people are just going to jump right on board because that's just the nature of this fan base is they love a winner. And people think of this as a derogatory term. I don't. I think that we are a big-time bandwagon sports city in general in a good way. Like when the teams are winning, we come out in full force and support these teams. And so, man, I just hope this starts well. Do you think there's anything more important, though, than Vladdy starting the season well? Like if he's raking, that's the number one point of people are going to be optimistic about the team. And if he's struggling, people are going to go, boy, it's looking like that 78-win season.
Right. I'll give you a tied for first because, and you're exactly right. Like, and I get asked a lot during spring training, whatever, you just bump into people wherever I am. And what do you think's a big key for them or whatever? And the answer is always Vladdy, right?
Yeah.
The number one answer is always Vladdy because we've seen the peak. And even if it's not the peak, if it's, 80-85% of the peak, that's a huge, huge boost for this lineup. But I would put, if that's 1A, then, or 1-1, if that's 1, I would put 1A as the bullpen right now because Swanson and Romano are out. And so people understand, they will start the year on the IL. For pitchers, it is a 15-day IL. You can backdate them a maximum of 3 days, which means they will be out a minimum of 12 days, which is 11 games. So they are not going to be there for at least 11 games. And Ross Atkins said yesterday, barring any setbacks, I'm paraphrasing, we are confident that they will be back within a month. So that's more than 11 games. Yeah. So, it's very realistic. These guys will miss 20, 25 games of the season. They've got to, and as it's one thing when your team doesn't hit, and Blue Jay fans saw that last year, and that's a certain kind of frustrating. Mm-hmm. It's a different kind of frustrating when your bullpen blows leads. And I think it was 2021 when that happened, right? The year they got Simber and Richards in the middle of the year because the bullpen was so bad at the beginning of the season. So there are two things that can happen to mitigate this. One is Jimmy Garcia and Chad Green and Nate Pearson and Tim Meza and Genesis Cabrera do the job in the late innings, or whoever's in there in the late innings. The other thing is for the offense to do enough where you don't have 3-2 games all the time. Mm-hmm. And didn't it feel like even in the games the Blue Jays won, every game was 3-2 last year, right? Yeah. So, but this is going, and other teams have injuries too. The Yankees have some, the Rays have a lot. But this is going to be a challenging stretch. And I'll even throw the first home series against Seattle in there. Seattle's good, and their starting pitching is great. So I think that's a 3-game series, if I'm not mistaken. So let's call it the first 13 games of the season that are going to be, keep your head above water kind of games for the Blue Jays. But, back to Vladdy, yes. 264, 26, and 94 is really good for most major leaguers. But he's capable of more. Yesterday I thought it was interesting, and we forget sometimes that he's been around a long time, but he's still relatively young. He just turned 25. Mm-hmm. And one of the comments that he made yesterday in a session with the media, and I was there at the Trop when he said it, he said, I'm in a better place mentally right now because I know it's 9, not just me. I think that's an interesting comment. And maybe him saying without saying, I felt pressure last year. We as a team weren't hitting, and I knew everybody, looks at me, and maybe I tried to do a little bit too much. Hopefully he doesn't do that. As an aside, I love the Justin Turner acquisition for 12 different reasons. I think it's great, and I think that he's going to be a big part of this team. I don't care. Here's another you were talking about things, looking back on things you said and how silly. not you personally, but I don't care what order the 1, 2, 3, 4, what order they hit in, and I don't care 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 what order the rotation is, because in 3 weeks it's all going to change, and it happens every year. But whether Vladdy's hitting 2 or 3, whether Bo's 2, 3, or 4, whether Springer's 1 or 4, whatever, it'll sort itself out. But I do think I kind of like Bo behind Vladdy, because I think Bo is a he's a drive runs in guy as opposed to a set the table guy, if you know what I mean. He's not a get on base guy. He's a do damage guy, right? He doesn't walk very much. He's out there to hit the ball in the gap. And I think Bo's in a really good place, and I think Justin Turner, with the quality and competitiveness of his at-bats, and then hopefully Varsho behind him, who had a great spring and has made some changes. And I know that Dalton Varsho's in a better place in his second year in the team, not trying to prove to people that he was worth the trade and all that. So I'm hoping there is some, positive regression, or if that's the proper term, there's some improvement from the guys offensively, but it does all start with Vladdy. And I think there were some encouraging signs in the spring, but it starts for real with Zach Eflin tonight.
Yeah. One, I think it's actually kind of funny, though, that he's like, now I feel like it's 9, not me. And it's like, Vladdy, the team's like the exact same. It's like, those guys are going, what? Sorry, say that again, Vladdy? Who did you say? It's like Justin Turner here, Isaiah Kiner-Falefa. He's like, now it's so different looking around the clubhouse and seeing those dudes. Now I'm with you on a lot of that stuff, but I do want to focus in a little bit on Varsho, because I don't want to misquote you, but I saw somewhere that you had spoken to someone about you thinking that, like, he does look really good. And I don't want to call your journalistic integrity into question here, but I've always been a little dubious with you because he's a cheesehead as well. So I'm like, I think he wants him to be better because he's just like a Packers fan. He wants this guy on the team forever so that they can talk about Jordan Love. And
Right.
But what is it about him? Because I think that just from that, you're right, it is positive regression. From a positive regression standpoint, he's probably, outside of Vladdy, the number one guy offensively that you go, okay, well, we've probably seen the floor. But do you think that what you're seeing, or what is it that you're seeing that gives you more optimism about him? Is it just the fact that he's not carrying that millstone around his neck, or is it something actually that you're observing from the spring games?
I think that's a big part of it. I've always felt that guys, when they get traded for the first time, that it can be a struggle for them. And now I'll give you some especially if they're being heavily counted on a contending team, which he was. Mm-hmm. He was traded for Gurriel and Moreno, and I don't know how much he's on social media, but you don't have to be on much to know how the fan base felt about that deal. And then people forget this whole thing. Brandon Belt was supposed to hit cleanup at the beginning of the year, but was coming off knee surgery, didn't even play till about 3 weeks into camp, didn't make contact for about another 3 weeks. Like, eventually he got it going and had a good year, but March and into April was not good for Belt. So they dropped Belt and they moved Varsho up. Also, Varsho was brought in to, and nobody said this explicitly, but quote unquote, to balance the lineup, because they had a ton of right-handed batters. So balance the lineup, hit cleanup, protect Vladdy, and help us get to the World Series. That's a lot, and I'm a big believer, and maybe not so much in sports like hockey and basketball, but certainly in baseball, where there's more time to think, that, sometimes you can be your worst enemy. And I know he's a tinkerer, and I know he's a perfectionist and can be hard on himself, and all that stuff. So, yes, I do believe that mentally, emotionally, psychologically, he's in a way better place. In terms of what I saw at the plate this spring, and I talked to him about it a couple of times between secret handshakes that Packer fans have, he's trying to do different things. And one of the things he's trying to do, and it's kind of been the team-wide philosophy from Don Mattingly down, is know what you can hit and know what you can't. Don't swing at what you can't hit until you get the 2 strikes. And it's not trying to draw walks. It's trying to get into a favorable count to do damage. And Don Mattingly said to me, we're trying to get them to focus on an area the size of a volleyball, not a beach ball. So we tell each of them, here are the numbers. This is what you hit on this kind of pitch in this kind of area. So Varsho's not Bo. Bo can hit pitches that, few people would even consider swinging at, and he can do damage. Varsho's got holes. He's got a hole in, he's got a hole up, and he's got like a soft change-up hole down and away, and he knows it. Mm-hmm. So with him, maybe more than anybody, I think Bo can just hit with the Bo philosophy, and he'll be fine.
Yeah.
But I think this, if they can stick to this plan, I think this helps Varsho more than just about anybody else. So I went up to Varsho the day after I talked to Mattingly, and that day in the game, Varsho had taken a 1-0 fastball about 4 inches above the belt, and then on the next pitch, the 2-0 pitch, which was about thigh high, he lined one sharply to right for a base hit. So I went up to him and I said, I asked our producer to get this video we're going to show during the game today, the 1-0 take and the 2-0 swing. I said, does that kind of encapsulate what you're trying to do this year? And he goes, absolutely. He said, last year I would have swung at that pitch, and maybe he swings through it or maybe he pops it up. He said, this year I'm trying to take what gives me trouble and swing at what I can handle. And I said, Don Mattingly told me the volleyball beach ball thing. Has he said that to you guys? He goes, every day. So it's in their heads to narrow their focus, narrow their sight. So sorry for the long answer, but I think it helps Varsho more than others because, quite frankly, he has holes. But if he can recognize what they are and be disciplined enough to lay off and get in a decent count, I think he is likely to have a good year. And actually, if you look back at his last 2 months last year,
yeah, it was better.
And then if you look back at 2 months and triple him, if he had done that for 6 months, we wouldn't be having this conversation right now. He actually was quite a bit better in August and September.
Yeah, it's funny so much with this team, and I remember. You remember after the 2021 season and it closed, and I talked to you about how the Jays just played with joy. There was a joy to them, and it was infectious, and I felt like it worked for the fan base too. Right? I believe in that kind of stuff, like the energy around a team and the energy of a fan base. And I don't think it's everything. Like, I don't think that just because the fans go to the game and they're, ornery, that the team's going to lose. But I think that there is a compounding effect, like the stuff that you're talking about here, and that you're tying it in with the way Vladdy was feeling and the way Varsho was feeling. And my hope is, and this is why, again, I just think that the beginning is so important. My hope is that these guys can get off to a good start so that it does alleviate some of the pressure on them and that they can just have fun playing baseball. Because I really think if this team is having fun, they're going to start to see success. That if they aren't, it's going to be the tightening up, and all of a sudden Varsho's going to be remembering who he's traded for again, and Vladdy's going to be thinking about his demons. You know what I mean? Like, that to me is such a critical component of this baseball team, is like the synergy between the fan base and the team and the joy.
And it's a valid point, and I don't know if people feel the same in the other 29 markets as well. I mean, you go back to 2021, and Teoscar Hernandez and Lourdes Gurriel were still on the team, and obviously that was a unique level of fun that year. Plus, they were hitting like the 27 Yankees most of the season, right? That's fun too. Winning is fun. But so with those two guys not on the team, obviously the personality of the team, changed last year. And after so Gurriel and Teoscar traded after 22, but 21 and even 22, super fun, obviously. And whether the front office felt they needed to get a little more serious or not, I have no idea if that was any part.
It seems like that was it.
It could be, it could not be. I don't want to speculate because I don't know.
Sure.
But obviously there were some different personalities, brought in some older guys, some guys who had been around, just who have different personalities, whatever. But it's interesting because, usually we have the conversation about what comes first, confidence or results. But with this team, you're right. It's like the conversation is fun or does results bring fun or does fun bring results? And this is professional sports. Like this isn't a 9-year-old t-ball kids, right? And it's funny that we're talking about this with Major League Baseball, but every year is different. And this year we'll have more Davis Schneider, and it will have Ernie Clement, and it will have Justin Turner, right? It will have some different personalities, but I'm with you that it is very important for them to get off. I'm not saying a great start.
Sure.
Like I said already, it's a keep your head above water start.
Survive.
I think this year, yes, because of the injuries and the road trip and the schedule and all that stuff. But and I think a lot of it too is a guy, and I think we've mentioned him once in passing here. George Springer's really important, really, really important. Fun George is super fun. Like he's capital F fun, so, and he didn't have his best year last year, and he knows that. And I talked to him down in Bradenton a couple of days ago at the last spring training game, and he's in a good place. He says he checked the boxes he wanted to check. He feels good. physically. He's in a good headspace heading into the season. It's March, right? There's always optimism, but I think he is motivated, this goes without saying, to have a better year than he had last year. And we can talk about so many different things, but I go back a lot to Vladdy, Kirk, Springer, and Varsho. If they need those guys to do a little bit better than they did last year, and hopefully they will. The other thing about this team, we talk about them, trying to stay afloat, is I think we're going to look up in a month or two, and whether it's Yariel Rodriguez or whether it's Alec Manoah, hopefully Swanson or Romano coming back, at some point Ricky Tiedemann is going to pitch for this team. Barring injury, he's going to pitch for this team this year. I think they're not in a great spot now because of the injuries, but I think the depth is there that, by the time they get to June, July, when other teams are scrambling, hopefully their depth is really showing itself. And I think they'll be fine on the pitching side. So if they do need help at the deadline, I think hopefully they'll 100% be focusing on offense if they need help offensively. But like I said before, every season is so long, and a dozen things are going to happen that none of us could ever predict. That's part of the fun of the season. But I do hope it's fun for the fans. More than anybody else, the fans deserve a fun season. And they want to fall in love with this team. And, you used words like ornery. And so I think fans are afraid to kind of open their hearts a little bit for fear of how are they going to break. Like 2021, it's the shot of Vladdy sitting in the dugout on the last day watching the Red Sox win on the scoreboard, right? Yeah. Watching the Red Sox win. And then we all know what happened in the playoffs the last 2 years. It's almost like you're afraid to get hurt again. That's how I look at the fans. But it's opening day. It's Hope Day. It's what's more regal than the Trop on opening day, right? So we got that going for us. But I hope that they've won 4 in a row on opening day. If anybody cares about that, but I hope they get off to a good start. And there's enough talent here to compete for a playoff spot. I think we would both agree on that. And I think there is urgency to win. And whether you want to use the term the window is closing or not, doesn't matter, whatever. But I think from the front office's point of view, if they're in it in June, July, they'll try to bolster the team if need be.
Yeah, I'm with you in George Springer being, like, it's weird to call him an X factor, but I think that he is the number one X factor. Like you touched on Kirk and Varsho, but I think that those two guys are, I don't want to say this with certainty because obviously anything can happen, but I would say if I was betting on anyone's numbers to go up from last year offensively, my picks would be Vladdy, Kirk, and Varsho, simply because I just think that all of them are too good from what we saw last year. Springer's numbers were bad, but also like the underlying numbers were tough. And he's going to be 35 years old in season this year. And so I just think there's a big question of if he can find it and he can be, George Springer, not the guy that was with the Astros, right? But the guy that from a season ago, like a season before, the guy that has the crazy win-loss record when he was in and versus out of the lineup. If you get that guy, I think it's like that's going to be one of the major talking points of the entire season. They need they sneaky need that guy, and I hope he can find it. And with the fan base, I'm with you. It's the word. It's everyone's guarded. That's it. Is everyone's guarded because especially after the Shohei thing, like I can speak personally. I was calling people, Dan. I was in tears. I was crying. Because I was saying this was going to change, like, what it meant to be a Canadian sports fan. I was like, this is going to change my life in a massive way. And then he wasn't on the plane. And so I think that after those playoff losses and then to also get kicked in the teeth that way, it's going to take a little while. We're basically the people, this is a bad analogy, but it's like we all got cheated on badly. And now we're trying to enter a new relationship, and it's like, I'm not going to move in right away. I'm going to keep my place.
And I get it.
I'm going to keep my apartment.
The Blue Jays aren't the only team in town that has made fans feel like that way.
It's actually kind of nice of them to just fit in. They're like, hey, we're just going to do our part. That's some cities like Pittsburgh. They're like, we do the black and yellow thing. Like that's our common theme. Toronto's is like, no, we're going to shatter you. Like we're going to shatter you across the board in tough ways. I know you got to run, but before you do, I got to do one quick thing, which is I don't get to talk about college basketball with anybody, and you have to do this with me for like 2 seconds. I just have to say, okay, so I just need to tell someone who knows what I'm talking about. I have my 5 favorite players so far from the tournament. It's DJ Burns, Tyler Kolek from Marquette, Jamal Shedd from Houston. It was just an awesome finish watching him in overtime. I love that Elliot Cadeau kid from UNC. Can't shoot a lick, but just this cool little playmaker, undersized guy. And then Baylor Shireman from Crichton. Who is your favorite guy to watch? Like if you're doing a Dan Shulman, and you can pick a couple of guys because I was greedy with the 5. But right now, moving forward of who's remaining, who's the guy or who's the team or the teams that you're just like, no, you got to make a little time for these guys because they're just really, really fun.
DJ Burns is the easy answer. And if you've seen him, you know that. So I did the ACC tournament where they won 5 games in 5 days. And, generally a big guy backing somebody down 5, 6, 7 dribbles, it's not pretty basketball. It's like 1950s basketball. But there's something about DJ Burns that I find absolutely irresistible. Yeah. He's so much fun to watch. And he's an enormous human being, as you know. But he's got soft hands and sweet feet, and he's very talented, and I love his emotion, his expression, all that. And if there's a Cinderella, they're it. They had to win 5 games in 5 days in the ACC tournament to get into this. They wouldn't even get into the final wasn't going to be enough, and now they've pulled off 2 wins and getting to the Sweet 16. And the slipper is not going to fit together. I mean, they're not going to win the national championship. They're going to run out of time. And it could be in their next game. But I think he is super fun. Jamal Shedd is great. If you like heart and soul and grit and guts and all that, I mean, he's that guy. I root for Clemson just because I cover them a lot.
Okay.
And they have year after year after year, kind of like the Blue Jays have had. Like they're that, oh, God, that was painful. Oh, God, that, they've had a bunch of that. And I've gotten to know the coaches, very, very well over the years, obviously, too. And Rick Barnes at Tennessee, I think, is like as awesome a guy as there is in the world. So I kind of have a little, I root for them a little bit. But if people who don't watch much basketball at all and have never heard of any guy in the tournament want to be entertained, we'll turn on the NC State game and watch DJ Burns.
I thought Clemson was going to blow it for sure. I couldn't believe it when I was watching it. I was like, holy crap, this is a nightmare. And I will say the guy who missed the cut for me on that top 5 is Shiflin.
Shefflin. Ian
Shefflin. Just like kind of a mound round of rebound kind of white guy. It's like he's got like this pudgy boy face, and then he's just ripping rebounds constantly and a heart and soul energy guy.
Cheeks, like he looks like the guy who comes and entertains at like a kid's birthday party.
He looks like comedic relief. Honestly, he does.
But he's great. He came in as like a 3-star prospect. Is this guy good enough to play in the ACC? And now he had a great year. He's another good choice too. You notice him. But it's been a great tournament. I haven't had a chance to watch a ton of it, but it's been a great tournament, and I'm hoping to watch a little after the Jays game too.
I will also be watching a little bit of it with the Jays after. I'll be watching just a touch. All right, I'll have it on. Let's just say, Dan Shulman, have a great call today. Thank you so much for making time for the show. I always appreciate it. You know that.
You got it, JD. Thanks.
Take care, man. Dan Shulman, voice of the Blue Jays, guy who likes college basketball.